Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Real Talk Fishing with No Limits. I'm joined today from way out east with our special guest, Ryan Buddie. Ryan's coming off back-to-back Team of the Year championships at Lake Erie Walleye Trail. Just won the championship as well. Ryan is I'm not going to tell you about Ryan. I'll let Ryan tell you about Ryan, but this guy fishes the world as he travels the world, being a pilot. And also, Ryan, welcome. Thanks for jumping on. What's happening over there in the east side? Is it as warm as it is over here in the Dakotas?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Brian. It's like about 70 degrees here today. I actually have some hunting buddies from Wisconsin. Actually, you guys know Nick Shirts. He's on his way in right now to come fishing, pretty much because it's too warm to hunt. So
because he can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so fishing's good. There's always opportunities, especially here. So yeah. And I'm not much of a hunter, but fall Brawl just started and getting into that. I like to go out and harvest a deer or two for the freezer every year, but I'm no trophy hunter. I only got so much time, and fishing is a priority for sure.
Yeah, fall Brawl, that's going on, like you said, and harvest a deer or two for the freezer is good because deer sticks, those all are great in a boat. Jerky.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's literally why I go deer hunting every year, so I have boat snacks. Tom, one of those guys always, what's your boat snacks? I'm like, it's deer sticks and deer jerky, things I can throw in that, like your Ranger, mine both got coolers built in. I can throw it in there and leave it. It doesn't really go bad so much. It can stay in there for quite a while. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's good protein. So tell everybody that, if they don't know Ryan and they don't know Lake Erie stuff, they've been living underneath the rock because the guys on stage every weekend, they got a tournament over there hosting up a trophy or a check by all means. Been doing the NWT for years, but for those that don't know Ryan, just give them a little background. What's Ryan do outside of the fishing world?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I grew up in Northeast Ohio here, right on shores of Lake Erie. I had a rocky river going through my backyard, so I grew up river fishing. I could just run down the hill and smallmouth and steelhead, and did that kind of thing. My grandpa and dad were always into fishing, so they kind of got me out there as well. And then my big breakthrough into the real industry was in college. I was sick of working construction and got a job. Kind of started expanding, my vision, and heard of a friend working up in Alaska, and took a job guiding in Alaska for the summers. This is my summer job in college, so that kind of plugged me into the industry. Got me my first pro staff deal, which was it's going back. It was actually Sims. They had a guide program, and back then it was just
still do.
Yeah, and it was just waiters basically then, and it was pretty amazing to see what they've grown to. But did that, and so that really expanded my my fishing knowledge and diversity, which I think is super important in this industry. And I can't even begin to say how instrumental that job was in not just my fishing career, but life in general. I mean, I was a 20-year-old kid and sent up to Alaska, and handed this big responsibility of taking people out and not only just teaching them to fish and putting them on fishing, but handling you're responsible. You're out in the wilderness,
dangerous place.
Oh yeah. And a lot of these clientele are, it wasn't a cheap place to go. So these are very successful, high-profile people from all over the world. So even just, learning from them, and you go out in the boat and you're with them for 10 hours, just like any guide, which is, I think, is a really, guiding is a really valuable life lesson, especially in today's day and age with the electronics and phones. And of course we didn't have that then, but still, I mean, you're forced to, hey, you got these people in your boat in your 10 hours, and you have to have a eye to eye, conversation with them, look them in the eye, shake their hand, things that a lot of our world doesn't do anymore. And, that was just a very valuable life lesson for me. Learned a lot about, fishing and everything doing that. And then, so continuing on, I moved back home after college, and then I would work part-time as a fishing guide on Lake Erie. I had my license from Alaska, my OUPV license. So I was like, well, might as well do that here. And it's part-time, because my full-time job, I was an airline pilot. So I worked for ExpressJet Airlines, which I honestly, people always ask me, keep going on and on here, but people ask me about, oh, why'd you become a pilot? Did you like to fly airplanes? Or, you always thought that. And it was really, I was more attracted to the lifestyle. When I was in high school looking for jobs, it was like, hey, you can have a full-time job, make a good living, and also afford, 16, 17, 18 days off a month, and then be able to travel the world. And I was like, sign me up, because
hard to beat.
I loved outdoors. I loved fishing. I loved skiing. There's a conservative part about me that just wanted the stability of a job. And then I was like, hey, like a full-time job. But then I was also like, hey, you know what? Flying airplane sounds kind of cool too. So that's how I got into flying. And it was really a perfect match for my fishing career to take off doing that. So I started fishing tournaments back. I think my first tournament I fished was like 2007. And then in 2010, kind of jumped headfirst in and fished the Lake Erie Walleye Trail and the MWC. And that first year, I won with my teammates. I won Team of the Year in both of those, the MWC and the Lake Erie Walleye Trail. And then from there, it was just like, it was just like, well, you're in it now. And started developing, contacts in the industry, and then you start doing seminars and just, meet relationships with boat dealers and things like that. And then, so it's been kind of full-fledged tournament fishing since then. I got married in 2012, and I got three beautiful girls, little girls, Nora, Stella, and Lucy. 11, 8, and 5. And so still doing the airline pilot thing. Now I fly for Delta Airlines. I fly Airbus 350 all over the world, mostly international stuff, and then travel with the girls and fish in tournaments, and still up here in Northeast Ohio. So
you got three girls. That's a busy house, and you got one about to turn 12. And from experience, I can tell you, 12 is the absolute worst year for little girls. 13's great. 12, I don't know what it was about my stepdaughter, but 12. And then my buddy, same thing. It's like, wow. I think it's the horrible. Things start going off, cattywampus at 12. So good luck with that one too.
Well, I haven't seen that yet. I mean, she's wonderful now. I think I got to give props to my wife. She's an amazing mom, and I feel like we're doing a good job of raising her and them. And I just before this year is kind of an interesting year. My wife's, it's always been her dream to homeschool the girls and travel the world, and that's what we're doing this year.
Oh,
homeschooling
awesome.
them, and then we're using my airline pilot privileges, travel benefits to travel the world. So we actually just got back from a month in Europe, and then we're homeschooling them while we're there, and then here at home. And I just got done teaching science to her. We were talking about seasons and the axis of the earth, and why its days are longer in the summer and shorter in the winter and all that. And it's fun. I'm really glad we're doing it, and I think it's a good experience for them. But I know those teenage years are coming. But
those experiences traveling I mean, you can't learn that. There's so much more. The homeschooling way is such a good way to do things nowadays, especially with the world we live in, and have a little bit of better control. But the education your daughters are getting traveling is just, there's nothing comparable to that. And then just the culture that they're getting intake. I mean, you're raising three going to be they already are, but extremely intelligent young ladies, I'm sure. Just that experience alone. My wife did time in London and studied abroad and things, and it's just you can usually tell people that we're that way. Just well-rounded.
Hope so.
I see that in the Midwest. We tend to travel outside, and the East and West Coast tend to travel way outside. They don't come into the middle as much. I don't know. This Midwesterners, to me, seem like we travel more all over the place, and East and West Coasters go east or west from the coast and not into the center, and don't get to see the nice Midwest people like us. But I don't know. I see a lot more well-traveled, well-versed people come out of the Midwest. So That's good. Good on you raising them. Those future young ladies, entrepreneurs, anglers. I see those social media with them in the boat. They are, they know what they're doing out there. They're being taught well.
Yeah, trying. We'll see. I don't know that they got the bug totally like I did, but they like to go, and I'll take that for now. But
Yep.
it's funny because sometimes you'll see a kid like, and you think at 5 years old they're just going to become a fishing maniac, and then all of a sudden, they're 8, 9, and they kind of not into it, and then you see that vice versa, and that kind of goes with anything. So,
Yep. Life they get into sports and school and other things come up, but if you at least get them going and introduced to it in increments, folks, if you got kids, don't burn them out and take them out there for a 10-hour day, because that's what you want to do. It's great. A lot of snacks, which we all, if you haven't known that, take a ton of snacks, but like 2-hour spurts. Even when the fishing's great, sometimes they're more interested in something else.
Yeah,
but,
no doubt. And I'll be first to admit, I struggle with that too. Like I get out there, like I had Nora out there yesterday, and we were perch fishing, and that's what she wanted to do. But I had my active target down, and I kept seeing these walleyes, swimming across. Like I couldn't hold myself, and I'm like, casting at them, and like, taken away from her, just trying to catch these perch. Is what she wanted to do and play with minnows. And I'm like, you know what?
Yep.
I do this all the time. I need to stop. And it's hard. So
it is hard.
But yeah,
playing with minnows. My daughter, same thing. She would name them.
Yeah,
but it was all right. I'd be like, "Hey, hand me Freddie." He's going on the hook, and she's like, "Yep, Freddie's got to get a big one." And I drop him down, and
Nora's giving them each one a kiss before she puts it out there. So
lucky minnows. At least they're willing to part with them.
Yeah,
so that's the good thing. Yeah, little kids love minnows, so that's good because that's cheap entertainment. So
no doubt,
that's what it takes, But moderation for them kids. But I occasionally get one in the boat as a guide that's a kid that I can't get out into the day. I'm like, hey, maybe you guys just went to a half day. You're bringing 2 little kids, and they're like, oh no, And then I'm like, yep, that kid's good to go. He can, we're done, and he doesn't want to go.
Yeah,
I'm like, I was that way, but I didn't get the opportunity to be in a boat very often. So when you were, you're like, I'm good. I can sleep in here. Just drop that anchor, and we're good. But to each is their own, and they're all different. But that's good. Getting them out young, and like I said, a lot of them will move away from it, maybe through high school, and they get into sport or just other things. Life throws all sorts of other interest at them. But I guarantee when they have children or they get out of college or whatever, they'll come back or they come back home. It's, hey, I want to go do that again, or at least they know how to do it. So when they have children someday, they're like, yeah, my dad taught me this, grandpa taught me all this, let's go. And then, that doesn't take much to reignite that bug. It may never be at the level that you or I are at, but that's okay. We don't need a world full of Ryan Bryans. We just need the world full of people that want to fish a little bit here and there.
Yeah. So just be outdoors, So.
Yep. Turn off those devices, turn off the screens, right? Get outside, see what the good Lord has left us out there and created, and then just enjoy it. And you're fortunate to be around one of the best walleye fishery in the entire country, so that certainly helps with the success rate when you get kids out there.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, sure. So
what's happening on Lake Erie right now? Fall Brawl. So those that you don't know about it, you're probably well versed in that. Maybe give a quick little synopsis of what that is. I believe there's 2 of them now. But just what's going on Lake Erie? How's the bite? What's happening?
Yeah. So the Fall Brawl is it started actually yesterday or the day before, but it goes through I think December 8th this year, and then they have the Walleye Slam, which is basically the same thing. The dates are a little bit different, but it's just sign up, fish as much as you want, biggest fish wins. And, there's 13,000 people in them. So the prizes are massive. 2 Ranger boats are first and second place in the Fall Brawl, and the Walleye Slam, I believe it's a Warrior boat. So it's pretty intense, pretty cool. It brings a ton of people to the area to fish for, and it's just kind of a fun thing. But that's going on. So it's kind of exciting.
So it's like $30 to enter or something, right? So if you're buying a fish license, you buy an entry into one of those, the Slam or the Brawl.
Yeah.
And then if you think you got a tank of a walleye the other day, you take it to one of the local bait shops and it gets weighed and registered, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's like weekly prizes as well. One thing people kind of know is, the veterans of the Fall Brawl and pretty common knowledge is that those fish are almost always caught in the last week or 2 of the Brawl. So those fish, we're going into fall patterns. The water's cooling off. As that water cools off, fish really put on the feed bag. A fish that is 11 pounds right now will probably be 12 and a half a month, a month and a half from now.
Yeah,
And
the eggs
also,
are developing. They're feeding like crazy.
yeah, and also they become the bigger ones become easier to target as well as you get into the later fall and early winter. So with that being said, people aren't that seriously fishing it right now. But the cool thing that they've done is there's weekly prizes. So you could go out and you're in contention for a weekly prize every week, and it's no chump change either. It's several $1,000s for a weekly prize, but not the big one. So, anyways, yeah, that's going on. As for the fishing, we just had this championship last week, and I like I said, I was over in Europe for a month, so I hadn't fished on Lake Erie since late August. And I came back, and first thing I noticed in practice was I was like, "Damn, the water is still 68 degrees out in the lake." So, which is pretty warm. So those fish, and I use a fish hawk religiously out there, and I was out in the middle of the lake, out in the sandbar, and I dropped that thing from the surface all the way to the bottom in like 58 feet or 50 some feet of water. And I remember it was 64.2 at the surface, and it was, or I'm sorry, 68.2 at the surface and 68.4 at the bottom. So the temperature difference from top to bottom in the lake was 0.2 degrees, which I don't know if I've ever seen it that uniformly mixed.
Yeah, you would expect it to be 50 degrees down there.
Well, I mean, you had the
considerably cooler.
Yeah, you have the fall turnover, and I mean the lake mixes when you get big winds, but usually there's always some kind of layering or something. But it was completely mixed. So what that does is that scatters the fish in the water column too. They could be 5 feet or 2 feet under the surface or all the way on the bottom and mixed all around. And they weren't really congregated anywhere. And I think that the other thing is once that water starts cooling, it really will it triggers them to put the feed bag on. So they hadn't really done that yet. So the fishing wasn't that good really, a week or so ago out in the lake. And it's getting better though now. Like even since then, we've had stable weather, cool 40-degree nights. I haven't been out in the last couple of days, but I'm sure it's cooling off and the bite will concentrate and they'll also start moving to shore. That's the thing too, is in that late summer, early fall, a lot of those fish are out. They're on the thermocline out in that deep water. Now that thermocline's blown up, they don't really have anywhere to be, but they're just starting to figure it out, and they'll migrate towards the shoreline and follow that shoreline from east to west as the season goes into the winter, and really put that feed bag on coming up, and it should be awesome fishing.
So everybody thinks trolling, pulling the offshore boards, love it. That is a great place to do it. It'll never stop because that's a hell of a great way to cover water and catch a lot of fish at Erie. But things are changing. You fished in WT this year. You got third, I think, in that one, right?
Yeah.
And I think you were trolling. I wasn't fishing out east by you. I hardly fished at all second day because of the wind where I was at. But it can still be done. It is not a thing of the past. What are you doing at Lake Erie Walleye Trail? Is everybody kind of migrating to this scope thing? Are we still trolling like crazy, or is it a pretty mixed bag of anglers?
Well, that's an interesting question. And Lake Erie's kind of it's a cool place to be a tournament angler right now, because it's not like a lot of these other fisheries where basically you got to be using forward-facing sonar. I mean, you saw that a lot in the NWT this year. I mean, that's 100% what it was, what it needed to be to win and what you had to do. Lake Erie is still a mix. Now, what I think it's kind of basically come down to is when the fish are shallower. So you're talking less than 35 feet from the surface. I think that the forward-facing sonar, the casting, is going to be the way to go. You can efficiently, you can pick out. It's easier to pick out the bigger fish. You can, get your bait on them fairly quick. Dropping it to them and stuff. So your spring through early summer tournaments, and then your fall tournaments I think tend to be your casting tournaments. Now, so Lake Erie Walleye Trail this year, let's see, there was 7 events, and 2 of the 7 were one casting. The other 5 are one trolling.
Now they have like jigging only events too, correct?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There's one jigging only event, and of course,
Oh, one. Okay.
that was one casting. But there was 7 like anything
Right.
goes events, and 2 of the 7 were one casting. Next year, I would expect that number to go up a little bit. I was really impressed, that NWT this year, this is going off a little bit, but when those guys like, Hoyer and Hunter Nitty, they beat me casting, and I was trolling. I think I was the top. Yeah, no, I was the top trolling boat, but I was impressed that they did that in the rough water that we had on
Yeah.
Deucer.
Tell me about it.
I didn't think that they would be able to do that. And then it was, I was actually inspired by it. So late, the rest of that spring I went out and I actually figured out how to do it in that really rough stuff. And it wasn't as hard as I anticipated. I mean, I think the key is, and what made it doable for them in that one is, they were fishing 25 feet of water or less.
Okay.
So it's not, you're not casting. If you're out in that rough stuff and you got to target 45 feet down and you got to cast and drop a bait to them, an individual fish. I don't know. Good luck.
You better have a heavy bait.
Yeah, you better have a heavy bait, but sometimes they don't want to bite that heavy or fast to make a bait. So I don't know.
Tough.
That still needs to be. It'll be interesting. I think like they got the Dunkirk event next year.
Which is typically deep, right? Very deep.
Yeah. I mean, now one thing the NWT has, which I'd like to see them change, is they have this 4-rod limit. So, I mean, that's one advantage the trollers have in the Lake Erie Walleye Trail is it's state regulation. So if you're in Ohio, you fish 6 rods. So 6-rod trollers, that helps the trollers out. It kind of evens the playing field a little bit.
But it's funny you say that because Cavias mentioned the same thing. He would like the MWC does that, I believe. They go with whatever the state regs are. Minnesota's 1 rod, blah blah blah. Wisconsin, Ohio, that's 3 rods, which I get it for trolling. We actually had this discussion, and anglers voted on it at the Devil's Lake Championship. We had an anglers meeting, and so 40 pros basically. I think 30 something 8 showed up. A couple of them just got the times mixed up. All but 1 voted to do that, or not to do that.
Oh, to not have the state regulation. Yeah, really.
Yep,
wow.
Keep it at 2 because hardly anybody fishes with 2 anymore, right? Except when we're on Dunkirk or Huron or something like that that's coming up on schedule. Yeah, it's funny that you say that and Kabaya said it, and literally the room, everybody said, nope, leave it at 2.
Yeah. Now,
or 1 individual wanted to go to 3 or to go to whatever the state regs were.
I think it'd be good for everyone because, I mean, reality is that there are a lot of guys in the NWT that are trollers, and you're going to wash those guys out real quick with how dominant the forward-facing sonar is. At least I think
there was some pretty good arguments made why to keep it at that. Courts had some good ones, but I think the way a lot of it was because of co-angler, right, and experience levels and this and that. But kind of the demand for that, a lot of that has kind of shifted a little bit. I think we're getting a lot more. Used to get a lot of guys that maybe their wife signed them up as a birthday gift, and they're 85 years old or something like that, right? And just the ability to take 90-mile boat rides and stuff isn't great. And sometimes their experience levels aren't there. But now I think you have a lot more competition even on the co-angler side, right? We're different, kind of a new wave, new generation coming in and signing up for all 4 because they have to get in.
Yeah.
So these guys are a little more committed, a little bit more interested, and maybe not even jumping up to the pro side, but learning a lot more to take it back for their local tournaments or MWC or AIM events type stuff. So I think your skill level on the co side, I think, has been elevated a little bit over the last couple of years. So a lot of concern was having a co that just doesn't have the skill set that it's going to be a kind of a mess if I'm trying to run 6 rods, basically by yourself almost, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I kind of would disagree on that because, I mean, as a pro, I think, one of your jobs is to oversee, teach, and mentor, and like, I think that's doable, and it's also it's your decision as a pro. You don't have, you don't
have to run 6.
Yeah, you're not tied to it. I mean, I think that in that NWT, if I could have run 6 rods, I would have had no problem doing it. And I might have been able to give those guys a run for the money, you know. Now, I will say, I think that the reason I say that is because I was in a better spot than they were. I was on bigger fish than they were.
Yeah, you
Now,
definitely were.
if I knew what I knew now, and you know, through a casting program at the fish that I was on in that tournament, I definitely think I could have given them a run for their money. But hey, it's a learning experience, you know, and I learned from that one too, and you know, it still walked away with third place. We'll take it, but you know, I mean, as for, you know, back to the casting versus trolling thing, like, you know, I was curious to see coming into later summer on Erie how relevant casting would be as we got out into that eastern basin and those fish were, you know, 55, 60, 65 feet down. And, you know, I mean, basically what I found out is trolling is definitely still relevant. We did a lot of casting. There was a lot of guys in the tournaments that did casting on those fish. And it's just getting a bait, you know, pinpointing. One thing I've, you know, learned about those fish with that target and watching it is they are not stationary. I used to think that, you know, walleye just kind of hover down there and, you know, just kind of sit there and wait for an opportunity to come by. No, they are
not so much.
They are moving. Like, so, you know, you cast a bait out, you know, 20, or, you know, 30, 40 feet, and then it's got to sink 60 feet, and you're casting that to a moving target. Like, the efficiency is just not exactly there, you know, whereas I could go out and, I mean, I know how to put, you know, 6 lines at, if the fish are at 58 feet of water or 63 feet of water, or, you know, or whatever, 50 feet of water, I know how to put 6 lines there, exactly there, and I control at 2.5 mile an hour. The efficiency is just, I mean, it's really good, you know, especially if you got 2 guys that, you know what they're doing, and the fish come in the boat real fast like that. So, you know, as for casting in that situation, now where those guys, you know, in that eastern basin, it's not like, not all the fish are necessarily out there in that 55, you know, 60, 65
Right.
feet down. You know, obviously, like when Hoyer won that one out of Dunkirk, that championship, he was fishing weeds on the northern shoreline, you know, in shallow water. Well, yeah, sure, that's going to be a casting bite, but that, you know, that's out of range for a lot of, you know, what we've been doing on the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, getting up there, and you know, so
Can you guys fish Canadian waters?
yeah, we can fish Canadian waters, but you know, that north shoreline in the central basin isn't quite like that eastern basin. It's got, you know, those points and protected areas.
Right.
You know, there can be the weed beds, and it's a whole different ecosystem up there that we don't really have now. There's always places to explore that people haven't done yet, and places that walleyes are that people don't know about yet. And, you know, that's going to be the key to, you know, what if those later summer tournaments, you know, for casting to be significant, or develop new tactics. And I'm sure that there will be that. But, you know, back to the Lake Erie Walleye Trail again this year, that's what I think is really cool and special about it, is that it takes a lot of different skill sets to do, you know, to have a complete season and win Team of the Year like we did. We did a lot of different tactics and did well on them all. And, you know, that's what's cool about it. And it really makes it a great trail too. And that it takes a, you know, a diverse angler to be able to do the whole thing and do it successfully.
It's a big trail. I mean, it obviously made national news last year, which everybody's seen, and we ain't going to go down that rabbit hole because the fish and waste thing has gotten pretty old. I'm sure you hear it every day still from people. But what's is that limited to 100 teams, or is there more than that? Or I mean, there's a lot of good sticks in there.
No, yeah, it's not limited at all, and it's really pretty remarkable what's happened with it in the last few years. Like, I always just, I never, you know, I wanted to fish. I always wanted to go to the highest level I possibly could, you know, with fishing. And that was, you know, go to the National Walleye Tour. And that's, you know, first it was the MWC, and then it was the National Walleye Tour. And I never really envisioned myself, like, so-called taking a step back to something like the Lake Erie Walleye Trail. But that's really not what it is anymore, because Jason Fisher took it over a few years ago, and his goal was just to make it huge and blow it up and big and no limits on boats. So we have events that are go well over 100 boats, and the payouts have gotten really good, especially on the top. It's their Ranger Cup events. So, I mean, I've won, I think, 3 Ranger Cup or actually 5 Ranger Cup in the last 2 years just doing that. So that adds a lot to the pot. I look at, like, I mean, I guess I'll just go out and say it. This is a No Limit broadcast, but I look at
Right.
I look at the MWC payouts, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is embarrassing compared to what it
Yeah.
used to be. And then you look at the Lake Erie Walleye Trail, and it's like, it's really, really good. And let me just say this too: if you fish anything for payouts, then you're missing the point. I mean,
Totally.
in any kind of walleye fishing, you're fishing for titles and trophies, and the competition, and that's how you're going to maintain doing this year after year after year. Because if you try to think logically about what it costs to do all this and that, it starts to you're going to second guess what you do. But if you do it for the love of the game and competition and that,
But it's got to make sense. It's got to make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, it's got to
give yourself the opportunity to at least break even on.
Yeah.
If you look, like you said, the MWC, I put it all in a spreadsheet before I fished NWT and went, this makes 0 sense. If guys like me who don't have, guys or whatever who don't get paid vacation, this is the aspect a lot of people forget about is if you're a guide or you're a whatever, and you take that week off or MWC maybe a couple days, there's no revenue coming in because you're not taking clients out. Now I got other guides and what have you, so now if you got paid vacation, that's different. But then again, you're limited. And like you said, can I do these 5 events now versus this, fish my home ones? Because obviously you got a home life and a job and, there's still family vacation. Your kids are at that age where you got to spend, they got a lot going on. So do you want to be gone all the time? But it's got to make a little sense. In MWC, if you're not in first or second, even with paid vacation, and now it's a team event. So you're splitting the pot, right? You're splitting expenses as well.
And the travel. Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't make any money. You're lucky to have broke even at that point. NWT, obviously the payouts are higher, but like you said, Lake Erie Walleye Trail, it's not a step back. That's a big circuit and payouts are good. And in your case, there's very limited travel for everybody fishing there. I'm sure there's some guys that probably travel a fair amount of distance to actually go there as well.
Oh yeah.
They got a little more cost on the line, but when you can stay close to home, like Casino Cups or North Dakota's got a lot of tournaments, these things, there's a lot more people, I think, getting into those. And if there isn't, there should be, especially with the cost of fuel and just the economy the way it's been. I think you're going to see a lot of that next year. As we were kind of talking about earlier, a lot of guys are going to focus on those tournaments as Governor's Cups because these payouts are significant. And the competition in Lake Erie Walleye Trail is not one to not shit. I mean, it's good. Now, some of these other local ones, Gov Cups, you maybe are only competing against, 50% of the field. The other ones are it's their annual thing.
Yeah.
They're just doing it to do it because they love to do it. And it's their weekly summer fishing trip. Not to say they don't, everybody stumbles into one here and there sometimes.
Yeah. And it's good. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And I mean, it's, for me, like, I was excited to see, like, hey, the Lake Erie Walleye Trail grew a lot. Your 100-boat fields, a lot of them. It gets really good press, good notoriety, good competition. It's everything you want as a tournament angler.
Yep.
I mean, the travel, most of the nights I sleep at home. I can practice, a couple of days and feel pretty comfortable going out and competitive and doing that. I mean, I do miss, I will say this, I mean, I do miss the travel and, the different fisheries and all that. I mean, as great as Lake Erie is, it is fun to go to some of these different fisheries. But the nice thing that's kind of been refreshing about, Lake Erie is with, all the forward-facing sonar stuff is now where I used to think that there was only one tactic to do on Lake Erie. No, there is a lot of, and that's what I did like about traveling to these other places is you would do different kind of tactics and whatnot, but hey, we're learning that we can do those right here on Lake Erie. I mean, I was slip bobber and fishing in the NTC this year,
right?
And I never imagined that. So that, I mean, it's for me right now. It's a great, great thing, and it's going well. Yeah.
There's a lot more. I used to see us in WT early on, and even otherwise. You used to have the East guys and the West. Basically, it's called Wisconsin, Minnesota, Dakotans, who seem to be a little bit more diverse because we have all sorts of different type of fisheries.
Well, yeah,
Rivers and reservoirs. We're trolling, we're pulling lead, we're jigging, slip bobbing, what have you. Then you get guys from Erie or wherever it was east that would come west to river tournament, and it's like I don't have to worry about those guys because some of them have never held a spinning rod. They don't know how to Lindy rig or whatever it may be, or jig, or and they flat out have said that. And I've had co's be like, yeah, the guy did literally grab the spinning rod, held it upside down. He's like, I've never done this. And I've had co's on my boats from like New York, and they're like, what are we doing? I'm like, we're jigging. He's like, okay, cool. I've never done that. I only know how to troll because that's all they've ever done. But thankfully, this technology is coming out, and those guys are becoming, like you said, a lot more diverse. And now your fisheries, it's a whole new place for you. It's opening up all new areas, new patterns, and it's fun again, right? Not that it wasn't fun before, but learning is fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that non-diverse angler thing is, that's a choice amongst anglers. Like you can
totally.
Like there's those type of people from anywhere. And one thing I've learned about fishing too is some people just have the it factor when it comes to fishing, and it doesn't matter if they haven't ever done a technique. If you send them to a place and give them the technique, tell them like, hey, this is what you need to do, and you do your homework, learn that technique, and you can develop it very, 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 very quickly. And that's not just for walleye fishing. I mean, that can go for, I've seen it, I do a lot of saltwater fishing and, overseas fishing, and you can see it. And I think that those undiverse anglers, a lot of that is, it's their own problem.
It's the choice of the angler,
not as much where they're from. With that being said, I was always jealous of the guys from like, the Green Bay, Winnebago area, that really have all these different options just like right there,
But then we also have a boat full of entirely too much stuff, and it's just, you eliminate choices. I love going to Erie, and it was like, this is it. When we were trolling, it was clean at the end of the day. Your boat's clean. You're not up all night rigging and tying a whole bunch of stuff. It's just like you pull it in, park it, plug it in. You're like, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Good to go. I'm just going to swap out some crankbaits in the morning, check my line. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's clean.
No doubt. Yeah.
And speaking of being a diverse angler, you're probably one of the most diverse anglers out there. You just got back from the World Predator, whatever it's called, tournament type thing. You guys been doing that for a few years. Did real well, I believe, this year, right?
Yeah. We did all right. We did the best we've done for sure. Not quite, in one of these, not quite reached our goal yet. But yeah, it's the artificial boat angling world, carnivorous fish boat angling world championship. Basically, you're fishing from a boat in pairs. It's artificial lures only, and you fish for a top predator species on host country's given body of water. So, and our Team USA consists of myself, Nick Schertz, John Hoyer, Max Wilson, and Jeremy Bengston came this year as an alternate and extra support. And we were over in Ireland, and there's a lot we've learned with this over the years. A lot of like with the format and certain challenges with traveling overseas and fishing like this and stuff. And we definitely made some steps this year. We ended up finishing 5th overall as a country out of 15 countries, and most of those all the other countries were European countries. So, I think the biggest thing was this year we actually got some practice in beyond the official. So the way it works is there's 2 official practice days, 7-hour or 8-hour days. So 16 hours to try to figure out a big body of water and new species that you've never fished. And that's what we've had the last 2 years. That's all we've had. And then there's a closed period, and you can go before this closed period. So Max and myself, we went before the closed period. Nick got a little bit of time in, like almost a month ahead of advance time. And so it definitely helped and made a difference. And the rental boat situation, that's how it works. Like most of those countries over there, they tow their own boats in. We obviously have to do rental boats, and that's a big challenge as well.
Oh yeah.
Fishing out of a boat, like we would show up in the morning and you wouldn't get to see your boat till a half hour before takeoff, and then we're sitting there rigging,
Right.
live sonar on it at 15 minutes before takeoff, and then trying to adjust the new trolling motors and stuff. But regardless, we had a respectable fifth place. We actually had the big fish each of the 3 days. First day, John and Max had it, and then Nick and I trumped them the second day and upped it a little big, and then the last day, John caught a massive one. So that one big fish for the whole event. So we at least got to bring home some hardware across the pond. So that was cool. So, yeah.
That's Nick gave us, I had him on here, he gave us pretty in depth on that world ice fishing stuff, and any of that is, I mean, they're lucky to have you on there to help them with their travel arrangements and understanding of all these other countries and the passports. I mean, there's a lot to that, and not going to Ireland ever or Europe. I mean, people are in for it, right? That could, like your outlet converters and just certain things that aren't on probably a lot of people's mind, that they're pretty fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, when they put the team together, I think they were just kind of looking for different diversities, or different backgrounds in fishing and different skill sets. And I mean, I guess one of mine was that, like, hey, I'm a world traveler by trade, so accustomed to doing that, and definitely, like, I fish a lot of times on my overnights in Amsterdam. So I'm fishing Zander over there and stuff. So learning those species, and then just being accustomed to world travel and jet lag and currencies. Yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable in that situation. So that was, I mean, I'd like to say maybe that was part of why they recruited me. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a tremendous challenge in tournament fishing, and it's something that it's a pretty big honor to be representing the United States of America in fishing, and I don't take one bit of that for granted. So
no, that is super cool, and as long as your guys' good finish.
Back to do it, I'll keep showing
going back,
and trying to get that gold medal. It's kind of cool too. It's like it's highly competitive fishing, and you're not fishing for money at all. It's just on silver,
Olympics,
gold for your country, and that's really what it's all about.
Yep, that is pretty cool stuff. I mean, we'll get that stuff in the Olympics here hopefully someday. And I know the Bass USA team kind of did the same thing, and then there's the World I mean, it's no small feat. How do the other countries look at fishing? I know it's way different here than it is over there.
Yeah, I mean, they have different tactics, and it's kind of like eye-opening, the way, like, learning how they fish over there, and they're really good at it. And this is I mean, not that this isn't a huge deal for us. It is a huge deal for me. If I could win one tournament of the year, it would be this one and stuff. I'd rather win this than a $100,000 national walleye tour. But, like, these guys, I mean, they take like 3-4 weeks off. Their countries, they're funded by their, government funded.
You guys are scraping every penny you can.
Oh yeah, we're putting most of our own bill over there. We're trying to get some sponsors for the team. If anyone's listening that wants to help support U.S. Angle and U.S. Predator team, we'll definitely be willing to talk, and we can actually get some really good publicity about.
Oh, for sure.
We're working on that, but we're definitely up against a tremendous challenge with these guys. Not only the funding that they have, but also they have the experience. All these have so far been
local knowledge.
Yeah, they have that. And like this year, it was kind of interesting. I guess I'll go into the tactics a little bit, but we thought that we would have a big advantage this year because in previous years we've seen them go around and they tend to just spot lock, and then they have their live scope holes and scan them around and fish, and that's kind of the style we've seen them fish in previous years. And so we thought, well, more of our style is the forward-facing sonar on the bow mount, aggressively moving around, finding targets and casting at them. And especially this year, it was going to be a pike-heavy tournament, so we were going to be targeting pike. So we thought we would be able to do that, put the forward-facing sonar on the bow, move around aggressively, find these fish, cast to them, and cover and hit a lot of targets. And to a certain extent, that did work well. Now, the Lithuanian team this year just basically they completely dominated the competition. They caught probably double the fish that even second place did. And what they were doing was way more efficient than using the bow mount. They were using their outboard with a pole mount, shooting out to the side, and they were using their outboard to move around fast, 4, 5, 6 knots, scanning for these suspended pike, which were easy to spot. And then they'd throw the boat in neutral or reverse, position the boat to where they can make the right cast, make the cast, fish didn't bite, they'd move on. And their efficiency was just incredible, and that's how they beat us. And some of the other countries were doing the same thing. I just don't think they were as good at it as the Lithuanian team was.
The advantage of not having a rental boat when you can have it rigged up, right?
Well, yeah, you can have it rigged up, and then also you can't drive the rental boat. We have to have a driver.
Oh, geez.
A licensing thing over there. So that
they don't give you like a 20-pound handicap then or something, because that's pretty much what it sounds like would be fair.
No. I'm not going to complain about the rules. I mean, we have we're learning, and we'll get our chance and stuff. But I mean, and it's not like even if we could have done that, we would have just instantly snapped into being able to do it like perfectly and stuff. I mean, there's definitely a learning curve and a skill set to doing what they were doing. Like other countries were doing it and weren't as good. I mean, then you got to know the exact bait and how to present it and trigger. And we were figuring that out, but just obviously not as good as them. And one of the reasons why it worked is that we learned just even about the fish is, it's not like those pike aren't exactly like our walleye in that they're not spooked by the boat and the outboard. Like they don't care if you get there with an outboard rumbling at them at 30, 40 feet. Like, I feel like our walleye would be a little bit more boat shy and leery about that. And then also they just kind of hover. They don't, like I was talking about our walleye in Lake Erie that are just constantly on the move. Like they're just going. They just those pike just kind of sit there and hover. So you can find that target and position that boat just about exactly where you want. And then when you know exactly, you can even figure out which way that pike is facing. And then really, once you're really dialed, you know exactly the cast to make and how to present it and all that. And it's just kind of a little different than the way we're fishing. And it's like, oh, bam, there's a fish, like fire the cast, like instantly put it on them. If it doesn't work, reel it in and cast again. And, that's more of our forward facing sonar walleye experience, whereas this was more, I mean, any muskie anglers that are listening are probably like, man, yeah, that's exactly how we would do it. Like the Lithuanian team would be doing it. But again, yeah, it's a learning experience. And I'm sure next year we probably won't even be fishing pike. We'll probably be fishing zander or perch or something like that too.
Right.
So
yeah.
There'll be more learning, but tremendous.
Like every tournament, you learn something new and you take it on to the next one. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about this new line that Seaguar introduced this year. It's been on the market for a couple years, but it's been over in Japan. They just brought it over to the United States this year, and I absolutely love it. It's called PEX8. This is by far the thinnest diameter braid I have ever used. This is still an 8-strand braided line with such a thin diameter. It's unbelievable. I'm using an 18-pound test today, and it feels like 2-pound. The advantages to this thin diameter is if it's windy out, I'm not catching much wind, I get less bow in the line. High pressure situations where the fish are, taking on a lot of fishing pressure, a thinner diameter line, less visible, of course. Current in the rivers, I'm going to cut the current a little better. I'm going to get better control, and they did all this without losing any of its strength. This stuff is still strong as all the Seaguar braided lines, and the sensitivity is second to none. So check this out. This is PEX8 over at seaguar.com.
And those zander are huge, and those perch over there I saw were pretty big. So,
oh yeah, and they definitely you think that they're a predator fish, top predator, and you think that they would be, it's a zander, it looks like a walleye, and it's similar size, eats similar bait, that it would be similar, and they're really not at all. Like zander and walleye, what triggers them to bite isn't even close to the same, and that's something we learned as well. And even their pike seem. I haven't fished a whole lot of pike, like specifically target them in North America, but to me it seems like what triggers them is quite a bit different than our North American pike. They're definitely more lethargic and more wanting, like it's basically just like presenting a bait at the right distance and viewing point to that fish, but just a very slow, just kind of creep along and they come up and snap it. Like anything erratic or aggressive style fishing, those European fish it doesn't seem to trigger them quite like our fish.
Are those fisheries smaller? That are more pressure? Is the water cleaner?
One thing, like they're definitely smaller. I mean, like we were going over there and they're like talking about how huge this body of water is, and I'm like, I'll show you a huge body of water.
Right. It's a puddle, man.
Yeah. But I mean, with that being said, there was a lot of space, but it was definitely a smaller fishery. Now, the Irish, it seemed like this was the best fishing. We've been here. We were in Czech Republic, and then we were in Latvia. And the Irish are very good, it seemed like, about conservation. Basically, nobody keeps pike over there. I didn't even see people keeping perch. It's a lot of catch and release, and it showed. It was a fantastic fishery with a lot of them in there. Now, when we were in Latvia, it didn't seem like that. Like the fish were a lot smaller. It seemed pressured. There wasn't that trophy fishery. And you go to I remember going to the market and in Latvia, and there's a whole bunch of zander sitting on ice in the market, that looked very fresh. And it's like, well, that's why we weren't catching trophy zander out there.
That's the payday for them here.
Yeah. Yep. Now, Czech Republic, I thought was a smaller body of water, but I think they were pretty good about their conservation as well. A lot of catch and release, and that was pretty good fishing as well. So.
Cool. I asked that because Seaguar released one of their JDM lines, which is their line from Japan this year, PEX8, and it is literally designed after the high fishing pressure that they have over there, because there's such small body of waters that are so many anglers. It's a H-strand braid with super, super thin diameter. And that's what makes all the difference for these guys, is having a super thin diameter line, super thin, fluorocarbon leaders, all the stuff that just any little thing is going to help you, obviously, when you're dealing with a high pressured, fishery finesse or whatever, is, or in your cases, like Erie, sometimes when you got super clean water. I mean, that we all know the fishing there is about the water clarity. The location is sometimes it's too clean, too dirty, what have you, right? You're kind of looking for that perfect mixture of two. But the PEX8 braid was at it. That was it. And they brought it over here, and I've been using it, and it's more in like all my finesse type stuff. And it definitely helps. But that's what it was, spun off of, was high pressure fishing.
That's just, that will help. That'll help in non-pressured stuff. I mean, anytime you can get more stealth and, thinner diameter and more sensitivity and stuff, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's another cool development that's a part of, this growing, this constantly developing industry. And I mean, it's cool to be a part of. And
I'm surprised those pike weren't so spooked. That's what I'm like, are they not that pressurized? But like I said, they're like, nobody, if they're not keeping them, I mean, I'm sure they're fishing them, but they're not keeping them. But, maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you're definitely right. You get 30 feet from a walleye around here in mid-season, and it's out of there. Once that bait hits the water, or that boat cruises by, or whatever, it's different everywhere. You said something earlier, and this is it's funny how things are so different from east, Midwest, whatever the case may be. But shallower, and you referred to 35 feet. I think shallow, I'm talking like, when I say shallow, I'm in 10 foot or less of water. Yeah. You're talking shallow because you got 60, 80 feet of water, but you fish a lot all summer out there, of 35 feet. So, and you use the fish hawk a lot. I touch on that. I've never used one. I've seen it. I've read all your stuff about it. Obviously, if I'm living out that, really anywhere, that thing is a tool that probably we should all have and use. But kind of explain how it is and how it works. I think it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. So there's a portable unit. It's the X2, which is nice. It just runs on 2 AA batteries, and then it has a probe that's now it's a lithium powered probe. So you just put it on a little pad charger, just like your cell phone, and charge it up. But essentially, it gives you it's a way to check the speed and the water speed, the down water speed and temperature. So out there trolling, I mean, I religiously just drop it down. I have it on a little short. I probably actually have it written right over there. I could show if there's viewers that want to see it, or you could just look it up. But anyways, I'm using it.
Go grab it. We got time.
All right, here.
Let's go grab it quick. We'll show them. We'll save them But it's yeah, definitely go check it out. Fish Shock. Could use like a little shorty rod or whatever with some braid, I imagine, to drop it down on a.
Yeah, exactly. So here we go.
Yep.
So this is the master. So this just slides in. There's all kinds of different mounts, but this just slides in your track there, and then you can turn it on, and then it's on connected to, this is called the slip deucer here, which is it's just a transducer that slides on your line, and then here's the probe, and then you weight it with so I think this is a 2-pound ball, and then
Like a little downrigger ball. Yep.
Yeah, it's just like a mini downrigger ball, and then they make it they make this little shorty rod. You could just use a saltwater. Actually, I think they might have discontinued this rod. You could just use a saltwater fishing bait rod, and then just put like 50-pound braid. And I just drop this thing right off the side of the boat pretty much anytime I'm trolling. And I'll use it to check, like I mentioned earlier in this, that I use it to check the water temperature. But honestly, I'm using it, and that can be important for checking thermoclines and stuff. But a lot of times you don't even need it to check the thermocline, because you could see the fish layered on your 2D sonar. Right. When there's a thermocline, and it really doesn't matter where the water temperature is to tell you where the fish are. So you can use it for that, but more often than not, I'm using it to check my speed through the water.
Because boat speed and lure speed are not the same thing.
Exactly. Yes, your speed over ground and your lure speed are definitely not the same thing. And the thing that I've learned about using that, and this was really instrumental in this. I won't say I used this in this last tournament, but just this principle is really instrumental and important on Lake Erie. Is that current is not uniform, like east to west or west to east. All right. What happens on the lake is what they call lake siege, and that's where, especially when Lake Erie runs southwest to northeast. So if you get a big southwest wind, that water will blow over to the eastern basin towards Buffalo, and the water level of the lake will rise over there. And then that wind dies, and all that water will come back, and then it sloshes like back and forth. So that current, you can be out in the middle of the lake and it's going one way, and then 2 hours later it's going the other way. And so it changes a lot, and that can be really important for how and where fish will set up on structure. And that's basically how we won this tournament, this championship last week on the Lake Erie Walleye Trail. Is we were just finding, like I said earlier, the water was 68 degrees out in the main lake, and fish were not happy. The basin, when I say the main lake, just the basin water fish, which there's a lot of basin water on Lake Erie, which is just big open bowls of featureless, sand, mud bottom, and it might change a depth or, a foot or two of depth over a mile. That's what I'm talking about. Those fish, and that's a very common area to fish, and can be very good. Those fish were just not in the mood. But in the Western Basin, you can get around a lot of like points and breakwalls and humps and bumps and islands. And when that wind is shifting back and forth, it creates current seams and eddies, and it's almost like a river. And those are ambush points. And that's where we were fishing, and that's where we found these fish that led to this championship win. But like I will religiously use this, not only, the fish hawk, not only just to figure out the down speed and the currents, but a lot of our trolling devices they're speed dependent. So like, dipsy divers or lead core line, or, offshore tackle tadpoles or inlet snap weights. So the faster you're going through the water, the higher they come up in the water column, the slower, the deeper they're going. I don't think that the walleye cares if that lure is traveling 1.8 mile per hour through the water or 2.1 mile per hour. If it goes by that fish, he's going to eat it. Okay? Yep. If it's 0.3 difference, isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. But the depth, the place in the water column is going to make a lot of difference. And if your weighted device is blowing up, 10 feet because you're going into a strong current or vice versa, and then you're missing the fish, where it's like, hey, yesterday my speed over ground on my GPS was 2 miles an hour, and I had this dipsy diver out 100 feet, and the fish are the same spot in the that I'm marking them. Why am I not catching them today? And I was yesterday. Well, the current's different, and that current had blown your dipsy diver up 8 feet or down, or vice versa. So that's where the fish hawk really shines, and that's how I use it.
I think a lot of people overlook the current in the Great Lakes because it's a deal. I mean, they think current, they think rivers, and obviously there's current rivers, but there's really current in most all fisheries, whether it's wind driven or your case. I mean, it's a big bathtub and it's sloshing back and forth. But anywhere you got islands, and reefs, those are current funnels and seams.
And that lake siege that I was talking about, that's wind driven. I mean, that'll happen on any elongated, especially elongated body of water. I mean, I remember. And this is one of my, back to tournament fishing, this is one of my more proud tournaments, was coming out to you. I fished out on Francis Case in the NWT, and I got a 5th place in that one. And that was, that's one that I like. It certainly wasn't my best finish in a tournament, but it's one of the ones that I'm more proud of because, it was fishing 8 feet of water and pitching a jig in that kind of water. And nothing irks me more than when people call me troller guy, and and that
Right.
and that one, hey, I took a top 5 in a body of water I'd never been in, pitching a jig in 8 to 9 feet of water. And I remember that current was a big deal because that river naturally flows north to south or whatever that is, I guess.
Yep.
On Francis Case, and we had that wind backing that up, and that made that current backing it up, and that made a big difference in how we presented and how we were jigging. And actually, I remember what I was doing is when the current was coming down strong, I basically just put the boat cross current, and I was pitching a jig in a plastic out at a 45 and kind of letting it swing behind the boat as I'm drifting downstream. And that worked really good with the jig in the plastic. But we also figured out another way to catch fish was, hey, we're moving downstream pretty good. What if we just put out a jig and a minnow and
drag that baby down
and almost just kind of let those drift downstream? And the key is not putting it in a rod holder, just holding it on the gunnel of the boat at like a 45-degree angle. And then when those things, went over, you could just you could grab the rod, give it to a little bit, and then lift up. And, if it was in a rod holder, it wouldn't work. But, we needed that current to do that. And that was, the lake siege was a big deal with that.
Yeah, you'll never see me up there without the rod dragging that minnow while I'm pitching because it catches a hell of a lot of fish. Sometimes it's too many because you're too busy and you're like, one of these has to go. I can't pitch and then constantly keep catching them on this one.
Yeah.
But
anyway, you can do. I mean, that's so important in tournament fishing is, just finding ways to do the math and how you can be more efficient and how can I catch more fish or faster than the other guy or quicker than the other guy. And, if you can figure those kind of things out and be more efficient, you're going to see a lot better results.
Sometimes that's the name of the game. It's a numbers game, and it's better just catch a whole bunch to get the ones I want versus I'm only going out for 5 big ones, which we all are. But sometimes it's a numbers game. Yeah. You got to catch a lot to get the right, like Lake Erie in a sense. It's a target-rich environment. Well, there's big ones and medium-sized ones, but I'm just going to have to catch a lot of fish.
But I mean, the efficiency comes into not only when you're trying to catch a lot, even the big ones, and just having your bait in the prime target of where those big ones are when you're fishing for only 5 fish and giving yourself more opportunities to catch those, even though it's not necessarily a lot. So yeah, I mean, it's just super, super critical in any kind of tournament fishing.
So we talk about efficiency, and fishing clean is that's a lot of what people referring to is I don't have a mess of stuff and I'm not missing fish. I'm not, I'm holding it versus rod holder, and instead of missing that bite every time, I'm not missing them. Every bite I get, I got.
Yeah,
more or less.
We were having that. Some people were asking me after this tournament about, we were talking about like importance of different things, and I said the 2 most underrated things in tournament fishing is one is not enough emphasis on getting your fish to the boat. So make fishing clean, basically, meaning when you get a bite, capitalize on it. So, that could be, it's amazing how many times you hear of guys that are like, oh, they got third place. Oh, lost an 8-pounder at the net or right off the back of the boat, or, and nothing I could have done about it. Or, well, really, is there nothing you could have done about that? Like,
There's something you could have did.
Were your hooks tip top shape? Where, was your net in the right position in the boat so that, how was your boat control while you're fighting that fish? What kind of hook set did you do on that fish? Have you studied different hook sets, versus different presentations and things like that? So if you can add a whole bunch of those little things together to capitalize on the bites that you're getting, you're going to see a lot better results. And then, so that's one thing. And then the other thing that I think is maybe missed probably the most amongst tournament anglers, and I see this all the time, is sleep. I just see guys like all the time that, go in and they fish these, crazy hours till dark, and then they're up partying or whatever, and, get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And, I can get up and go, I can go fish on no sleep. Like, I don't care.
But you're not sharp.
No, yeah. I mean, fishing is it's a huge mental game, and it's a lot of information processing and attention to detail, and all that adds up. And no matter how much you think you can be on your game, you're not. I mean, I learned that a lot from, my flying career that I, transfer over. And I got to thank the airlines I've worked for doing that. Is they make us study in our yearly, training we're doing all the time. And,
and we're all glad for it that Ryan's sharp when he's flying our planes, that he gets a good night rest. So.
Yeah, it's important that, you study circadian rhythms and all that kind of stuff, and how to, tip out mental performance, and sleep matters. So you have to work hard, obviously, in practice and fishing and stuff. But when it comes to that tournament, I always try to prioritize giving myself, 7 or 8 hours of sleep, and those at least those last 2 or 3 days leading up to the tournament. And I think it makes a big difference.
You just mentioned the hook set, and I'm dealing with that right now, where it's a very soft bite, and we're drifting and dragging because pitching to them just isn't working. And it's kind of, as a guide, it's different. Best left in the rod holder, because the way it's the drift is your rod's constantly doing this. It's shallow.
Yeah, right.
2-4 foot of water. You're just banging off the bottom. That's just ripping current.
You'll lose
you're holding it, and you're like, everything's a fish. And it's like, no, you just got to let it load and go. But a client wants to grab it, and then they're ripping it, and I can just go, lost it. It's let it load, take it out slow, or hold it. It's fine if you're holding it, as long as you understand what you're letting. But it's feeding it, and it's just a sweep. Sometimes you're just reeling down, even like bottom bouncers. If you grab it and rip it, you're just pulling it right out. They're letting go of it. And this, we're dealing with it right now. The hook set it's just a gentle sweep, and then keeping the tension. And the clients, once they get it, they considerably catch more fish. But we're missing, first 2 or 3 hours, 50% of the bites are not caught.
Yeah.
And minnow comes in and the back's ripped off. I'm like, you gotta be ginger.
Yeah.
Reel down even.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the thing too about that is it's a super loaded question and topic to think about, because every presentation is completely different. Like, a jig and a minnow versus like, a jig and wrap or a big swim bait, or even trolling, trolling a crankbait versus trolling a spinner rig with a live crawler is completely different as well, and the speed that you're trolling at too makes a difference. So like, all that stuff is the mentality that you have to have, and you have to process that and then come up with, do the experience. And then a lot of times it just comes down to, fishing, especially, this goes back to our conversation about fishing, diversity in fishing and different species and body of water and freshwater and saltwater in Europe and North America. And a lot of it, I've found, over my life and career, is it just comes down to logic. If you just think what makes sense, not necessarily like, what you saw on YouTube or what, so-and-so said on stage or whatever, or what you read in this magazine. But, if you can just, hey, okay, what am I doing? What is this fish doing? Why is this fish here? And what makes sense for how to present to it, and then how to, fight and battle this fish and land this fish too. if you just think about the whole logic thing, most of the time that'll get you close to or in the right direction. And then after the logic thing, then just do a little bit of experimenting, and that'll put you on, what you need to do for success.
We're pretty good at overcomplicating the simple things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's really not that hard. We make it hard sometimes, but it's by choice again, right? The English choice. So, but that's how we learn. So this is good stuff, Ryan. And there you have it, folks. That's attention to details is why you get back-to-back Team of the Year. Why you win the Lake Erie Walleye Trail Championship. The fish hawk, the things that Ryan's doing that, I've said it 100 times. You've heard it from a lot of people on there. It's the very little things that can make a huge difference from a good day to a great day, or from a 5th place to a 1st place.
Oh yeah.
Or even a 1st to 180th place. You can be right next to the guy that wins it, and he's doing one subtle thing different, and you may be in last and they're in 1st.
Yeah, just it's find 100 little things that you can think make a difference, and maybe try doing all those little things, and really reality is maybe only 3 of those things make a difference. But the margins for victory or success are always they're very small.
Very, very small.
So if you can just add up a bunch of those little things, like, hey, even as simple, like, as I said, just getting another hour of sleep, or what kind of snap you're using for your crankbait, or the size leader material, or how you rig your offshore tackle boards, or do they all matter? No, absolutely not. But if you put a bunch of them together, and some of them do, then you'll start seeing results. And I attribute a lot of my success to that, for sure, no doubt.
True. Well, you kind of gave a nugget, but I was just about to ask you, and you could have another one as we wrap this thing up. Leave our listeners and viewers with a little Ryan Buddie nugget to help them along their angling journey or path, whether they're fun fishing, tournament fishing, or looking to fish the next level. What do you suggest to them?
Wow. I guess just kind of like going, along those lines, attention to detail, and then, basically going to logic. What makes sense? Like what is that? I guess Corey Sprengel taught me something a long time ago that I think really helped. Is I forget if he even told me this, or I read it, or heard it on a podcast or something, but he was saying that every fish you catch, you try to think, okay, it's not, hey, I caught this fish on 20 foot back on a flicker minnow and in 18 feet of water. Okay, that's what I need to do. No, instead of that, it's like, okay, why did I catch that fish there? Is that fish feeding on a minnow, other minnows up in that depth in the water column, and is he there because of the structure, or the water temperature, or the current, or the water color, or you thinking of the why. Okay, so every fish you catch, you're not going to always know why, but if you try to at least have that mentality of thinking why and thinking of what the fish is doing, I think that whether you're weekend warrior or once a year fisherman, or highly competitive tournament fishing, if you adopt that mentality, it'll make you a tremendously better fisherman, and it'll help start making that logic that I was talking about sense, and put more fish in the boat, for sure.
Couldn't agree more. And Springel's well known to drop some good advice out there from here and there.
That's the other thing is, listening to stuff like this and take as much advice.
Yep.
I probably need to do that more. I don't get into a whole lot of the YouTube and the media, and there's so many good resources that I'm sure I could learn so much out there from, but
but you're on the water, and nothing beats time on the water. That's hands down the best way to go.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. But I can't be on the water all the time and everywhere, and so
no.
Yeah. So
no. Well, don't. While you're flying, focus on that, not the YouTube or whatever. I mean, I imagine there's an awful lot of autopilot settings where you can kick back.
Well, yeah, not while I'm flying, but I mean, I guess one of the things that I have too that I like about my career is I have flying, we go to these places overseas, and you have a layover there. I can't.
Yeah, you got a lot of downtime.
So you get to the layover, and we have to sleep and stuff. But I have 24 to 36 hour, 38-hour layovers overseas all the time. So yeah, you sleep and stuff. And, a lot of times I like to, get some good food in some of these places and exercise, but there is a lot of downtime. And there's so much work that I can do fishing related that's you can do with your computer in a hotel room. Or, I've taken spinner rigs and tied spinner rigs in hotel rooms in Paris, France. I remember doing that. And there's a lot of, especially when you get into this industry at this level, and you have sponsors that you have to work with and doing activity reports and all kinds of things like that. There's always stuff to do that, and I can do that when I'm overseas, on layovers, and I'm not taken away from my family time when I'm at home. So it works for me. It's a good balance, and having a good, that goes back to your question on advice and stuff. And finding time is one of the most valuable things we have, in life, and finding ways to make time to do, what we do with also balancing, work and family life is super critical. And I feel like, that's a huge part of my success is I've found ways to successfully do that. Still spend a ton of time with the girls and that, and have a career that makes us a comfortable living, and then still being able to spend time on the water. But I'll tell you one thing that I don't do is I don't have a whole lot of other hobbies. I don't,
too much time.
I've always said golf is a waste of fishing time. So, you'll never find me on a golf course. I don't hunt a whole lot because, I know it would take away from this craft. I've intentionally never gone waterfowl hunting in my life because I know I'd probably love it. I've been invited to do it a bunch, but it's like, I don't need to be adding to these things. So kind of prioritizing and, making efficiency and finding time to,
make explore that.
Make all the
15 years from now when the kids are out of the house and what have you, but your plate's full, for sure.
Yeah.
But there you have it. The why is a tidbit. Ask the why, and I've always said that in just in business. It says general. I say 3 times. Why did that flicker minnow catch? That fish was why. There's minnows up there. Why are there minnows up there? Water temp, possibly. Why is the water temp what it is up there? Position of the sun. If you keep asking the why, usually 3 times over, you're going to get to the. Hopefully
and a lot of times you're going to ask why and I have no clue, but I mean, sometimes you will, so, and
sometimes there's a rogue fish that's just rogue.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't know why the hell he was there, but he was, and he got caught. And now you're confused as heck for the rest of the day.
So. Well, and I feel like that's the beauty of what the advantage we have. We talked about advantages of different places that you're from and, different bodies of what, where you're at. But one of the, huge advantages when fishing's good, you can really learn a lot. Because it's like, hey, Lake Erie, we have phenomenal fishing basically always. There's fish there and they're biting on something. So you could really, if you take the initiative, you can really test out a lot of stuff and learn a lot of stuff, when it is good like that. So that's when it's the best time to experiment is when fishing is good, not as much when fishing is tough. And, if you have that opportunity, take advantage of it.
Yep, for sure. Good stuff, Ryan. Thank you. We appreciate your time. Congrats on your championship. You're back-to-back. Congrats on the 5th place in the Predator, the World USA team. Awesome. Way to go. You're getting better. You're climbing up it. You got all the kind of the world's against you in a sense in that. So coming in 5th is pretty darn good. And I'm sure that gold medal is going to be coming home with you guys soon. You've been crushing it and really, honing that in the last several 4, 5, 6, 7 years you've been doing it. So appreciate your time on here, and people check him out, RyanBuddie.com. Head over to his social pages, follow along. He's always giving out some good info, kind of wrapping up his tournaments, what was done. If you haven't checked in or jumped into Lake Erie Walleye Trail, Ryan would be happy to take your money. So, head over there and sign up.
Yeah.
It's a good circuit. It's not a step down from nothing. It is a step up. And Josh or Jason, I think, runs that, right?
Yep. Jason Fisher. Yep.
Yeah, runs everybody's kind of seen a little bit of Jason out there, but he does a hell of a job, and that is what we appreciate when tournament director is holds everybody accountable like that and gets it done and gets it taken care of. Just a good clean circuit. There's a lot of those out there. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Thank you once again, Ryan, and are you following, listening, and viewing? Stay safe, and we'll See you on the water.